Today we have Abdurrehman joining us. He's 20, he's an engineering major, and he's studied under various sheikhs in Brooklyn. And he's currently the MCC Youth Director. And we're going to start off by talking about the prophetic interactions. And before we begin, we'll start with a quick Quran recitation with Brother Abdullah.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. All thanks and praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for we seek His help and His forgiveness, and we seek refuge in Allah from the evil within our souls and the consequences of our evil deeds. Whoever Allah guides can never be led astray, and whoever Allah leads astray can never find guidance. And I bear witness that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his last and final messenger. So the topic today that I presented was prophetic interactions. And of course we always hear that the ideal role model is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But there's something that we often overlook when it comes to the whole idea of prophetic interactions and what to learn from it. Oftentimes when we'll look at hadith, when we'll look at stories, and what we'll learn from it is, okay, this companion has come and asked that this is halal or haram. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will answer, yes, this is allowed, no, this is not allowed, X, Y, and Z, right? That's typically the lesson that we take from it. That's at face value. But these lessons or these stories have more behind them, simply beyond all this halal. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, so we don't take the hadith of that story at face value. There's more lessons that come behind it, and this is the beauty behind Islam. And aside from prophetic interactions, the Quran has stories in it about generations that came before, prophets that came before, or people that came before. And the idea is that we learn lessons from this, and we learn the lessons that, you see oftentimes a lot of these problems will be present in modern society. So those stories or those, the people that came before and the sins or the actions that may have done are not simply a coincidence. Those lessons are there for us to learn. Number one. Number two, why are we taking advice, or why are we looking at the interactions of a man 1400 years ago? Because the topic is prophetic interactions, yes or no? Prophetic interactions, why are we focusing on a man 1400 years ago in the desert in Arabia who was illiterate, didn't know how to read and write? How come we're looking at his interactions? Of course, as Muslims, we value the fact that it was Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also, aside from the fact that we should aspire. No one is perfect. I have sins, you guys have sins. Yes or no? We're not perfect. But we should all aspire to be as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. We should follow his sunnah. We should follow his footsteps. But a man 1400 years ago, right, in Islam, in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well tells us the importance of mannerisms. I talked about this in Jumu'ah today too. Islam, every single action that you do, think about it. Your interactions with your family. Is that mannerisms? Yes or no? Mannerisms. The interaction that you have with people when you come to the masjid, is it mannerisms? Yeah. When you enter the bathroom, etiquettes of entering the bathroom, does that come under mannerisms? The way you hold, you conduct yourself as a Muslim, mannerisms? So most things, if not all in Islam, when you're standing in front of Allah, we're in the masjid right now. When you come to the masjid, you have a different way of speaking, a different way of acting, a different way of clothing. You should be in the best of clothing, all these things. When you come for Jum'ah as men, we should either smell good, we should look good, all these things. Everything or most things in Islam are revolving around mannerisms. And whose mannerisms better to follow? Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Simple as that. So just a few hadith. And of course today is more of an introductory stage as to why exactly it is that we're learning about prophetic interactions. And the goal inshallah is to be able to break it into different sections. Interactions with companions, what lesson is there to learn? Perhaps one lesson and story in hadith that go hand in hand with that. The way you should act with people, the way you should act with those that do not believe, you should act with the disbelievers, the ones that are not Muslim, the way you interact with your parents, family. Each interaction has its own special, or it's subjective to that scenario. The way you act with your friends, is that the way you act with your parents? No. The way you act with your friends is not the way you will act with your shaykh. The way you act with one another is different from the way you may act with others. So ideally we should follow that which Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has told us, for he received revelation from Allah, what better than that? Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, nothing is heavier on the scale of deeds than one's good manners. Nothing is heavier on the scale of deeds than one's good manners. Why do I talk about this hadith? Or why do I talk about these things? Do you pray? I'm calling you because I know you, that's why. You pray, right? Do you get up in Fajr? It's a bit difficult. Yes or no? Right? Do you fast in Ramadan? Did everyone fast in Ramadan? Yes or no? These things are physical. These things, require you. And these things we've, instilled in our mind that these things are extremely important. Do you think, Abdul, I'm calling you again. Do you think Salah is extremely important? Yes. Right? Do you think, you're the way you could be the way you come to masjid, you're praying, you're fasting, you're making Hajj or Umrah, the Hijjah, all these things are extremely important, yes or no? Right? So the hadith itself says that there's nothing heavier on the scale of deeds than good manners. Now, I might just be yapping about these things. But why I mention this is because it's such a small thing, but yet it deems such a big reward. Are you guys, if you guys look like these human beings, you guys I would hope have good manners, yes or no? Right? The way you conduct yourself and all these things, deem such a big reward that it's heavier than anything else. And the scholars say that, as mentioned hadith, that the individual who has good mannerisms is up to the level of those that pray and fast and do all these other good deeds. Because you'll see, someone that has proper knowledge, someone that's studied, someone that that is sincere to Islam, and I emphasize on them being sincere because we see all kinds of characters nowadays. People will be one thing on social media, another thing behind closed doors, another thing with the family. It's like 5 different people in one. The reason why I mention this, you'll see that someone who has sought knowledge, someone who is sincere to the deen, someone who is an ideal, of course not perfect because perfect was close to them, but someone who is to be looked up as a role model Muslim, you'll see that their mannerisms will be up to par with their actions and their ibadah. But someone who lacks in mannerisms will eventually lack in other departments as well. In our culture, we have a funny saying. They say that if you want to know how someone actually is, you should see how they are at the dinner table. Right? When the true mannerisms come out, that's when you see how someone actually is. All jokes aside, it's true. These mannerisms show the sincerity, the dedication to your Islam and to your deen and to the way you practice. Because it's easy, and I put air quotes, it's easy for someone to go do that one big action in life, Go perform Umrah. Go for, how many of you have been to Umrah before? Or Hajj? Have you guys been before or no? Umrah or Hajj? The Saudi Arabia period? You guys should go as well. So all these big actions, it's easy for you or me to go one time to Saudi Arabia, make Umrah, khalas, and say I'm set for life. I'm going to Jannah, that's it, one-way ticket. That's not how it works. It's these small things that you do in a daily routine that matter the most. You know the hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us that Allah loves actions, the best of actions, or Allah loves those actions that are small, but close. Consistent. I was looking for a different word. Starts with a C as well. There you go. Right? It's actions that are small but continuous. And you will see these actions that are small are your pillars, right? Your pillars of faith, your pillars of Islam. Fasting, a pillar of Islam. Praying, a pillar of Islam. Giving zakat, a pillar of Islam. Is anyone doing engineering here? Or any sort of architect or whatever? You'll know that these pillars are what support any sort of structure. Your pillars are what support any sort of structure. If you don't fast properly, imagine visualizing your head, right? I'm going to get a bit technical with you guys now. Imagine in your head there's a building, or there's some sort of structure that has a base, the base leading the pillars. You remove fasting, you remove your siyam, you remove your charity. You're removing pillars from the bottom of the structure. Is that structure going to fall over, yes or no? It's going to fall over. Because you're missing those vital things that are keeping it up. The same applies to your iman. And as a Muslim, what you should do. If you're fasting, or the Mondays and Thursdays and all whatever it is, your prayers, your zakat, if these things and your charity are not up to par, everything else will be lacking as well. And these actions of fasting, siyam, zakat, charity, and mannerisms, these small things that happen in your daily routine are beautiful in the eyes. That action that you may do is better than someone that goes and does hajj once in a blue moon and comes back and never prays ever again. Because it's small and continuous. It builds up. Is anyone here good at math? You know the term exponential? Hope I'm not throwing big terms, right? It grows exponentially, just hasanat amongst your daily routine, right? And this goes for the sunnah as well. This is why you should do things the sunnah way. If I'm going to drink water, right? I'm going to drink that water regardless. Why not do it the way of the sunnah, so that way I can get reward while I'm drinking water. When I enter the bathroom, I'm going to go to the bathroom regardless. Might as well enter the way Rasulullah told us, so that way I can get reward for doing so. When you enter the house, you're not going to sleep on the steps. You're going to go home. Enter the way Rasulullah told us, so that way you can get the reward. Now enough of this yapping about why prophetic interactions are important, right? Mannerisms. And for mannerisms, there's going to be other stories and other lessons that come out. The way you conduct yourself and the way that you interact with other people, period. Right? And even before that, Rasulullah tells us, a person may attain through good manners the same level of virtue of those who spent their night in prayer. That through mannerisms, up all night in prayer, you're spending your whole night prayer. Oh, while everyone's sleeping, while everyone's knocked out, snoring, mouth open, drooling, right? You're up and you simply have good mannerisms, it deems more reward than that person. Or it gets the same virtue as that individual, And the best amongst you in Islam are those with the best manners. The hadith mentions that. The hadith mentions righteousness is good character. So the way you conduct yourself, and you're doing it sincerely, not to impress people. And I talk about this every single lecture and every single chance that I get. People who hear me all the time, probably sick of me saying this. Intentions are very sincere. Anything that you do, whether it's your ibadah, whether it's your good manners, whether it's your good character, you don't do it because the person left me or the person to the right of me says or compliments me and I get gassed up and I feel nice, you know? It's going to be nice. No, you do it because Allah told you. Allah told you, hey, you do this, that enough for it is the reason alone. And you do it so that way Allah can reward you. I'm not willing to reward anyone. Not rich, right? You guys are not willing to reward each other. Who rewards you? I want to hear everyone say it. Allah. Who rewards you? Wake up, guys. Who rewards you? There you go. Right? You guys, two people over here, and how many of you guys, there are a lot of you guys. So Allah rewards you, therefore you make sure that you do it for the sake of Allah. Now to kind of, segue into the interaction itself. There's one story that I want to focus on. And there's one hadith that mentions the story. It's a bit of a longer hadith. Let me pull it up before I read. He mentioned there's a companion in this whole scenario, right? And the one lesson I want to focus on, there's going to be two lessons. One at face value. One at face value, and a lesson that's a bit more indirect. That will teach us how we interact and how Rasulullah ﷺ acted with other individuals. Because a lot of things happen. Aside from him, and before we even talk about the hadith, this individual was such an individual that people, right? Now, for example, if Abdullah says, oh, Abdurrahman's a bit wild, and don't talk to him, and this and that, right? You guys will avoid me, you guys interact with me, it'll be in your mind. I won't be able to impress you or take that which Abdullah says from you, right? Don't be saying anything bad about me. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the disbelievers, the people of the land that just hated him, despised him, would go and tell people, avoid this man, he's a magician, he's a sorcerer, he's this, he's that, this and all the names you can imagine. And this is verbal abuse aside from all the physical abuse, right? That Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam received. So this verbal abuse, avoid this person. And simply through his character would people become Muslim. Seeing a man that's a prophet, this is higher than any king you can imagine on earth, that's not taking charity from people, that's helping out his companions, that takes a day this size, he splits it amongst his companions, eating everyone, how we say, my boy eats too? That's literally what Rasulullah was doing, right? Everyone was taken care of. Everyone was doing good. A man who everyone's saying is a violent man, chopping heads off, this and that, is now sitting in compassion with someone he doesn't even know. Simply through his mannerisms and his interactions with others where people becoming Muslim. And that's the footsteps that we should follow. And even before I know it's yapping a lot, but the reason why I mentioned this is extremely important. The prophetic interactions, the lessons we learn from this are applicable nowadays as well. Muslims, forget about non-Muslims. Muslims themselves don't have the time to come to the masjid, to pray, to read Quran, to learn about Islam. Muslims don't have the time to do it. They have the time, they just don't want to do it. So if Muslims are not doing it, what makes you think a non-Muslim is going to come in and read Quran? If I told you guys, and I also said there's a halaqah coming, no non-Muslim is going to come inside, right? So our best actions, or our best form of da'wah is going to be through what? Through what? I'm asking you guys. Through what? Huh? There you go. Through what? I'm going to put you guys on the spot. Through what?
Manners.
There you go. Through manners. Thank you, whoever that was. Through manners. A Muslim, right? They see me outside, I look like a terrorist. Have this on, right? And I go and I start cursing at people. I have road rage, flicking someone off, giving them the bird as I cut them off in traffic. They're going to be like, look, he's a Muslim. Look, you connect the actions to the guy who looks like it. It's going to be their connotation with Islam. Yes or no? But if someone, I'm dressed like this and I'm helping someone out, or someone's in trouble, everyone's ignoring him, and I go and I help him, not me, you guys as well. If someone goes and helps them and they have the appearance of a Muslim, that's going to give Islam a positive reputation as well. In one way or another, even if that person does not want to admit it, they're going to have that thought in their mind when they remember Islam. Hey, one time I saw that Muslim, Islam over there, right, helping out that person when everyone was ignoring him. So this is your best form of da'wah. These prophetic interactions, the lessons you learn from this, apply this in your daily life. Not only will there be a difference in your life, but you'll see that it plays a difference among those that are surrounding you, and those actions will rub off on them. Back to the story, inshallah. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he was with, one of the companions narrates that a young man came to the Prophet, right? The young man, we hormones, you know what I'm saying? So the companion comes, and he asks one of the most ridiculous questions you'll ever hear in your life. Right? Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of Allah. Keep in mind, Rasulullah was other companions as well, and we know some companions who were strict, right? Like, if anyone even looked at the Prophet the wrong way, he was ready to just give me the word on time as well, right? So he comes and asks an extremely ridiculous question. And I want you guys to think about this as well. O Messenger of Allah, give me permission to commit zina. Give me permission to commit adultery. Oh, what is this? Give me permission to commit. He's asking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know that's not allowed. What a ridiculous statement. And right now, we may think it's ridiculous. He's coming and asking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam such a ridiculous thing. I would never do that. That's what we think. What if I told you guys that we actually do act like this? What if I told you guys that, yes, we don't go to a prophet, because we don't have one time. We don't go to a prophet or a righteous person, hey, love this for me. No. Right? I don't go to police officers and tell them, hey, let me break the rules, You simply go, we ask in a different scenario. What do I mean by a different scenario? We make dua to Allah for ridiculous things. Ya Allah, erase my problems completely. I I'm not going to do anything. Let me just say here, Ya Allah, erase my problems. Or Ya Allah, make him or her fall in love with me. Just ridiculous things, right? All these ridiculous things that we ask Allah. Yes, granted, it's not the same situation, but are we also not making these, wild requests? And there's a reason why I'm mentioning that we do this as well. Hold on to that thought in your brain, right? Hold it, lock it in there somewhere and think about it, right? This companion asks him about this thing. All the companions, or most of them, are going nuts. They're going crazy. What do you ask? Why would you ask such a question? They're rebuking him. Stop, chill out, bro. Wow. The companion turns to him and starts rebuking him, and the Prophet ﷺ said, come closer. Is he going to slap him? Is he going to whack him on the head? Come closer. Someone tells me if I ask someone asks a ridiculous question, tell me to come closer, I'm moving far away. I don't know about you. Right? Come closer. The young man drew closer to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ asked him, and think about this, simply through words. Would you like it if it was your mother? Right? It doesn't mean it in a disrespectful way, your mom. No. He means it, would you like it if it was your mother? Because a mother is someone that, as a son, I love my mom, she's right there by the way, right? So, they say, you have a close relation, a close bond. So he hits home a little bit. He gets a bit personal in the sense, not to attack that person, but more so simply to allow that person to understand. And I always give this example. Relatability is credibility. Does that make sense? If I can relate to you guys, which I hope I can, not that hope, right? If I can relate to you guys, whatever I say will have a bit more value to you than a guy that comes in, is in his 90s, gray beard, and is barely, has any teeth. It's a different situation because you're close to that person. You can relate to that person. You understand where that person is coming from, and you know that that person is able to address your issues or is able to relate to you, hence making them more credible and valuable to what they say, or whatever they say is more valuable to you. So he says, come closer. Doesn't whack him on the head, simply says, would you like it if it was your mother? Would you like it if it was your mom? The man answered, no. By Allah, may Allah make me protection for you. Of course, no. Why would I want it to be my mom? Rasulullah asks and continues. People also do not like it for their mothers. The Prophet ﷺ added, would you like it for your daughter? What does the person say? Simply, the further Prophet ﷺ asked, would you like for it to be your sister? The Prophet ﷺ received the same answer to every single question that he asked. Same thing when it comes to aunts. So it's listing all the female, relatives he may have. The Prophet ﷺ then placed his hand on the young man and prayed for him. Oh Allah, so he put his hand on the chest and said, oh Allah, purify, or put his hand on the hadith as mentioned, whether it was heart or shoulder or whatever. But he places his hand on him and says, oh Allah, forgive his sins, purify his heart, and protect his chastity, his private areas. And Abu Umaymah, the narrator of this hadith, said the young man did not pay heed to any temptation afterwards. That individual, that Sahaba, that companion, was able to resist his temptations after this dua was made for him when Rasulullah when he asked that question. Now, two lessons. One of them being very obvious, the other one being not so much obvious. Would someone want to go out and give me the obvious lesson behind this? What's the obvious lesson? Think. Use your brain. You're doing some homework, right? The obvious lesson is what? That says haram. Simple, right? That adultery is not allowed. Simple. Now the lesson behind this, prophetic interactions, right? You see how Rasulullah did not completely just throw his idea out. The companions are losing it. The companions are mad. Why would you ask such a question? But yet he took him and he told them, hey, would you like it if it was this relative of yours? Would you like it if it was that relative of yours? He addressed them in a way that was relatable to him, in a way that he would understand, hitting close to home, so that way that person can learn his lesson. Did he use harsh words? Was he physical? Was he rude? Disrespectful? So,
on top of that, he was merciful. He made dua.
There you go. I was going to say the next thing. Beautiful. Exactly. He made dua for him at the end. All these lessons we should take and we should apply. How do we apply them? when we act with someone, make sure, or advising someone as well, make sure that you do so in a way that is not embarrassing to them, that is on the side if applicable. Right? This person asked in front of people, therefore he received this response in front of people. Speak to them in a way that's soft. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you'll see in numerous narrations, was an extremely soft-spoken individual. And if you look at the advice that Luqman alayhi salam gave to his son, right? The 10 advices, you guys know that story or no? The 10 advices Luqman alayhi salam gave his son. Worship Allah alone, your parents, this and that. One of the advices that he gave, look at the second page of Surah Luqman. Towards the end, he said, do not be loud in your voice. Right? He wasn't harsh, Rasulullah was not harsh to that individual, but even after that, and this is the main thing that I want you guys to focus on, making sure that you understand where someone else is coming from. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew. He's a young man, right? He didn't have NASA and science and World Health Organization, whatever you want to call it back then, right? But he knew that hormones and all these things, there's temptation, especially for a young man. For young women as well, this applies to both people. To keep it very blunt with you guys, there's a lot of temptations, being in that sense, and at the same time, worldly temptations when it comes to substances, social media, yada yada, you name it, right? All these temptations. He knew in this particular scenario that there are temptations. You guys think about it. How many times will you have to stop yourself from doing something? How many times will you have to, hey, you know what? I shouldn't be doing this. It's haram. Think about it. Think of all the examples in your mind. Oh. You know what, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. This is haram. I'm tempted to do this, but I'm going to stay away from it. Temptations is not an issue. The issue becomes when you act upon those temptations. Rasulullah knew, hey, this individual has temptations, right? Rasulullah said, and let him know that, hey, to keep it blunt, when you commit this act, one side is enjoying this act, the other side is crying because it was their female relative that was involved in this. And even for a man, it's insulting, let alone a woman as well. Islam holds women very high. So you may be happy and this and that, but know that the other party is being affected by it. That's indirectly what he said. Would you like it if it was your mom? No, he let him know that, hey, the same way that you're going out and doing this with someone, they have a male relative or they have a female relative, or they're as humans, period, they are affected by it. So just because you are not affected does not mean someone else is not. What do I mean by this? When you act with other individuals, and I know it's a very redundant piece of advice, you have to always keep someone else's situation in mind. You do not know where they're coming from. Do not know what they've been going through. Some people may not have certain exposures. Not everyone, Allah barik, is as smart as you guys. Not everyone is geniuses like yourselves. Someone may be going through tough times. We see all these news of someone, or for example, may Allah preserve all you guys, someone that you may went to high school with, is falling into drugs. Someone that you went to school with is an alcoholic, is this and that. Someone that you know in the family is just committing a sin, period. You yourself may have indulged in a sin, but just because you do not partake in that sin, or you do not have that mentality, does not mean that someone else is not in that problem or that situation. And as redundant as it sounds, we since kindergarten, since pre-K, since before we even have teeth, treat others the way you want to be treated. Wallahi, it's a very strong piece of advice. Because oftentimes we're in our own little bubble. We're in our own little thoughts. I've been giving lectures sometimes and I see people completely zoned out, right? They're on their own little world enjoying themselves. In that little bubble, we forget that there's other humans that exist. In that little bubble, we forget that other people may have problems. Just because you are not going through that problem doesn't mean someone else is not. Everyone has their own little journey. Everyone has their own bunch of problems. Everyone has something that they are working on, you yourself included. So if someone, for example, you go to a sheikh, and you ask him a question. This is a sheikh, a scholar. Ideally, he would know what he's talking about, and he would know a lot of things. He knows more than myself and you guys. I go to a scholar, you ask him a question. You say, hey, sheikh, X, Y, and Z, whatever, right? Oh, for example, when I wake up in the morning, what do I say in the morning of come, all right? Or hey, how many rak'ahs do I pray for some things? Or is this part mandatory? Is this part obligatory? How many of you guys will know that some small part of wudu is sunnah or it's mandatory? Questions that are small. You go to the sheikh who studied books and books and books and knows the fiqh of this and all these things and the deepest of sciences of Islam. You go ask him, and I air quote this because no question is a dumb question. You go ask him this dumb question, And the Sheikh turns around and says, what is this ridiculous statement you're asking me? I'm a Sheikh, a grand Sheikh, a grand Mufti, this, that. Why would you ask me such a degrading question? Would you like, turn the tables now. When someone comes to you, or you're interacting with people, think about now, if that Sheikh asked you that question, or that Sheikh responded in such a way, would you like it? No. Would you feel degraded? Yes. Right? You would feel degraded. The Sheikh's, he's insulting me, I asked him a simple question, he's embarrassing me in front of people. Now turn that onto someone when they come to you. In your daily life. Rasulullah, in numerous places you will see that he was always compassionate and thoughtful about the person that was in front of him. To the point where when people, if someone touches me now, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to blow my fuse, right? And as guys do, when someone insults us or something, we go crazy, we go barbaric, right? We just absolutely lose it. That's just human tendency. Is it understandable? Yes. It's justifiable? No. But if someone, for example, someone comes up to you and discourages you in the face, you're going to go crazy, right? You're going to lose it. Makes sense. People used to literally attack Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Attack, and I mean physically attacking him. Physically, verbally, things you can imagine. To the point where an angel said, you give me the word, I will crush these people between these two mountains. You guys know that story, right? Said, I will crush this entire town and these people in between these mountains. If someone threw, I don't know, like a feather at you, you'd be like, yeah, bro, crush those mountains, go crazy. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so compassionate and so thoughtful of other individuals to the point where he said, you know what? Alright, leave it. Let it be. And eventually they came back and became Muslim. Look at it when he conquered Mecca, when people were about to be held hostage, right? Or people are completely just, that's it, they surrender. When they're able to conquer Mecca, what happens? They can capture them, whatever it is, he can, take them. That's how war works back then, right? But what happens? He says, on this day you guys are all free. So my idea being of compassion towards other individuals, and by compassion being mindful, right, of someone maybe going through something. Now, this can be in terms of advice. This can be in terms of a problem that may come to you with. It could be when you're giving advice to someone that's not coming to you, or it could simply be when you see someone. If you see someone they walk in, or someone that's loud outside, someone that's not acting the way you may act, don't automatically, hey, you know what, I don't act like that, this person's crazy, they have something wrong with them. Okay, even if they do, you should go and help. You should do whatever you can to help. You don't rule them out because simply they don't act the way you do, they don't look the way you do, all these things. So you have to be understanding of the person that's in front of you, the way Rasulullah was. And this is something we overlook, I know, redundant advice. But I talk about this today too. The most redundant, the most simple advice is often the one that is the best. The simplest of things are the ones that we often overlook because it becomes so normal for us. We hear it all the time. Oh, treat others the way we want to be treated. Be compassionate, be mindful of people, be this, be that. To the point where we hear it so much that we don't even focus on it because it's just instilled in my mind, it's a thought in my brain. Alright, that's it. You act upon these things, you think about them, and you have to be mindful of them. The same way that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all numerous hadith has told us that it's extremely important for mannerisms, we have to practice those mannerisms. Now the segues us into another point, another topic you guys want to say. When it comes to advising and being given advice. Right? There's numerous hadith about this as well. Allah barik, you guys are in the masjid. I'm assuming you guys are very knowledgeable. You guys know what you guys are talking about. So you will see people, they will come to you oftentimes, or you will see someone doing something wrong. Apply the lesson that I told you, and apply the things that I'm going to tell you when you're interacting with these people. Number one, do not hold yourself above anyone else. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? This is a messenger of Allah, yes or no? A prophet, one of the best, if not the best of people, who literally holds himself at the level of the companions in the sense where he sits with them. Of course, there's an element of respect and of authority, if you want to call it, but yet he still does not hold himself by making others feel pressure. Hey, or companions would often joke around with him as well. He was able to sit back and relax and didn't, it wasn't a hot shot. We follow this example as well. Once you see someone, for example, we'll put a scenario together. You see someone, they come to the masjid and they're praying wrong. They're praying wrong. You guys know how to pray properly. That person's praying. The same way the hadith says, you understand where that person's coming from. Maybe this person grew up in a household where this person was not taught how to pray properly. Maybe this person is a reaver. They're learning how to pray newly. Maybe this person was never taught by his family. Maybe the way his family prays is wrong as well, and he's just following their footsteps. Instead of saying, yo, salah, man, it's something so simple, we do it 5 times a day. How is this person praying wrong? Kafir, yallah, walk out the masjid. No. You see how oftentimes we'll dramatically just assume this person's wrong, this person doesn't know any better, he's a kafir, he's a, this bid'ah, all these things. We jump to these conclusions, when in reality we should take a step back, see where this person's coming from. It's said in the hadith as well, that you should give your fellow Muslims the best benefit of doubt. To the point where the hadith mentioned, if there is alcohol on his lips, assume it just fell there. And you will see, if someone's talking on the phone, for example, and you hear the voice of a sister or her sister or brother, assume it's your father, assume it's your brother. Instead of saying, oh, this person's talking to this or this, that. Same way, same idea applies when it comes to saying something, hey, maybe this person doesn't know any better. What do you do now? You step up to that person. You talk to them. You tell them, hey, you know what you're doing is wrong. Now, to proceed forward, you have to be mindful of the individual's feelings as well. The same way Rasulullah in this hadith talks about, and I'm going to take some other hadith and compile it with this story as well. Let's look at the end of that story. The end where, number one, or even in the middle, where he's compassionate in his words. Doesn't attack him. Does he attack him? No. Simply just tells him, would you like it if this was your female relative? He talks to him, soft in his speech, and indirect in his speech as well. The scholars say that when you're advising someone, when you're talking to someone, if you want to get a point across, if you can, this is emphasis on if you can, because oftentimes we're a bit hard-headed and we don't think, right? So sometimes you have to be blunt. But when you advise someone, when you talk to someone, you be indirect with them. What do I mean? If you look at the example of the grandchildren of Prophet ﷺ, there was a scholar, there was a sheikh, he was making wudu, and he was making wudu wrong. You guys make wudu or no? I would hope, right? All the time. Something so simple. 5 times a day, or if you're one of those people that holds up Fajr to Isha, I congratulate you, right? I don't got that kind of ball, right? No, can't do it. Sheikh making wudu. His grandkids, they're young. How did they advise him? They knew that they were making wudu wrong. They said, yeah, Sheikh, do this for us. Me and my brother, we're going to have a competition. That's what I'm saying. We're going to have a competition. Who makes wudu better? Right? The Sheikh. They didn't want to go to the Sheikh and disrespect the Sheikh. We say that in Islam there is, like age doesn't matter, it's about knowledge, but you still have to be courteous to those that are older to you, right? Because they've spent their whole lifetime on earth. They've been longer in the masjid than you've been on earth. They go to the Sheikh and say, hey Sheikh, let's have a competition, me and my brother. You let us know who makes wudu better. They both make wudu. And they both make wudu the same. And they both make wudu correctly. What does the Sheikh say? To paraphrase, he gives them compliments saying, you guys knew that I made wudu wrong. And you guys advised me in a way that I was not expecting. May Allah reward you, right? The Sheikh knew that he found out that he's making a mistake. Who says let's make a wudu competition, right? Even if it's in a competitive way, they figure out their own little kids, that's it. But they wanted to advise the Sheikh, they wanted to advise the elder, and they did so in a way that was indirect. The same way Rasulullah instead of telling the kid, he asks, well, can I commit zina? Right? He tells him, no, you can't commit it. Alright, walk out. No. He tells him, hey, would you like it if it was your sister? Would you like it if it was your mother? Would you like it if it was your aunt? He's indirect at this point where the person is able to understand and relate. Because if you speak to some people bluntly, as valid as your point may be, that person may not be receptive to it. Make sense? If I tell you, for example, one of you guys are praying salah wrong, right? And I say, you're praying wrong. Am I right? Yes or no? Would I be correct in saying, hey, you're wrong, it's wrong? But instead I tell them, you know what, brother, mashallah, I'm proud of you, or sister, or whatever. Proud of you, you're praying salah, right? But it's better if you do it this way. Rasulullah tells us to do it this way, right? Act like this, be soft in your speech, be indirect in your speech, because being blunt, and this is part of mannerisms as well, that being blunt sometimes does not make people receptive to the advice you're giving, regardless of how valid that statement may be. And if you look at the end of the hadith, so we talked about him not completely in the first part of the hadith, where he's not completely, waving away the kid for asking such a wild question. He understands where that kid is coming from, and he addresses it, number one. Number two, he's compassionate and soft in his words, and he's also, what? He's making sure that he's a bit indirect with how he states his advice. Number three, but look at the end. And you mentioned this as well. What did he do at the end? There you go. He made dua for that person at the end. It's human tendency. You should compliment people, right? Tell him your homeboy, you look good. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. Right? Compliment people. And being complimentary in the way when you give advice makes people more receptive to it. If I tell you you're wrong, alright, and you're in your salah, you may be receptive to it, you may not be receptive to it. But I say, yo, I like your green, I like your glasses. This high price one. You're going to be a bit more receptive to it, right? Or I like your goatee. Alright? You're going to be a bit more receptive to that advice. Because now I've created that bond with you where, okay, we've got off on the good foot, we cracked a few jokes, I think I'm somewhat funny sometimes. Crack a few jokes, hey brother, by the way, it's like this. We've established that relation where you're now, even if it's to a small extent, you are comfortable with that person. That person's comfortable with you, and that person can ask you those questions. Or you can, whatever you say, it's more credible to that person because you have created that bond and you've started off on the right foot. So now, after that, when you're advising someone, try to do so in a way that's not direct. Don't be too blunt. And also compliment the person while you're at it. Right? Hey brother, you smell good. What's that cologne you're wearing? For the sisters, I like your hijab. Like my hijab too. So all these things, right? Compliment them, and after that, then you go and you perhaps advise them. You're starting off on the right foot. This is the way Rasulullah would do. He could have just ended it off simply. Forget about even dragging it up this long, this conversation. He could have simply said, no, it's haram. I can't do that. That's it. End of story. It's wrong. It's the Prophet of Allah. And that answer is right. But the lesson to be taught is be compassionate in the way you see. Be understanding in when a person comes to you. And at the end, what did he do? He placed his hand on that individual and made dua for him. Made dua for him, and that dua was accepted, and that kid or that companion was not tempting, or was not falling victim to his temptations. The narrator of the hadith says that that companion afterwards did not pay any heed to his temptations thereafter. So what do? Be soft in your speech. Be kind in your speech. Be compassionate in your speech. Be compassionate in your interaction with others. You do not know what a person is going through. And even if someone is disrespectful and rude to you, you be the bigger person. It said in the hadith that Allah grants a house in Jannah for two people, right? The hadith, I can think of two individuals on top of my head. Number one, and this is mentioned second in the hadith, is someone who stops lying even if it's for jokes. Oftentimes we will crack a joke and it will lie. Even the person that gives up lying, let it be a joke as well. Just gives up lying. You can crack jokes that are truthful as well, It's a funny world we live in. Number two is someone who gives up arguing even if they're right. Of course, granted it's a different situation, different hadith, but the idea still stands. That you're compassionate, you don't indulge in arguments, your understanding of where a person's coming from. You may be right, they're wrong, but guess what? This person's going through something, this person doesn't know any better. I will advise them step by step. Don't just jump to these big conclusions. And we have this tendency as human beings, and even aside from being human beings, to put it quite frankly, Americans in general. We just quick, everything is quick in our lives, and that's it. I'm from Brooklyn, I don't know how this is over in Queens, but everything quick, you get on your way, that's it, go back, Quick. You shouldn't be jumping to those conclusions as quickly. Understand where someone's coming from. Understand that this person may be going through some sort of trouble. Just because you do not think like that, just because you do not act like that, does not mean that there's not someone out there that also is not falling victim to those things that you are not falling victim to. Same way how they may not be victims to something that you are not, that you are a victim of. A certain desire you may have, they may not have. And what they may have, you may not have. It works both ways. So be compassionate in the way you act with people. Be compassionate in the way you advise people. Be compassionate in the way you speak to people. Be indirect in the way you speak to people so it's more receptive. And making sure, also before anything else, whenever you do advise people, and this is a bit off topic, we make sure that you verify what you say, right? For this topic, you're probably watching a live on Instagram. Sheikh Muhammad Badawi, you know? Right? That's my boy, I love him. So me and him sat, make sure I verified everything. Hey, Sheikh, it's like this, it's like that. He gave me some advice, this story, this hadith, right? And another hadith now that I talk about him, mentions it in my head, Rasulullah said, to paraphrase, said that most of his things, or most of his mission on earth as a prophet, was to also teach mannerisms as well. Teach mannerisms. Like I mentioned earlier, everything in Islam has mannerisms in it. When you came to the masjid, you sat down, right? You said first thing you said to me was, right? It's part of mannerisms. Saying salam. You walked in, you were not loud, you were not disruptive, they'll reward you. You were calm, walked in, you sat down, you started listening. Is that not mannerisms? It's good mannerisms, right? For those of you that came, you guys sat down, no disrupting, no nothing, said salam, whatever, sat down, you guys started listening. Part of mannerisms. When you walk into your home, you say salam to everyone, you read certain du'as. Is that mannerisms? And etiquettes. The word etiquette, or etiquette as an action, comes under mannerisms as well. Yes or no? So, etiquettes of the bathroom, going into the bathroom, going into the masjid, going into your home, how you interact with people. Everything, if not almost everything, in Islam has to do with mannerisms. So that's what we're talking about, the virtue and the importance behind mannerisms and following these things. And the little subtopic of it was being compassionate to those that you were advising, and being compassionate and understanding of those that are maybe doing ridiculous things or things that you are not doing. The same way Rasulullah as a prophet of Allah. If he wanted to, he could have been harsh as he wanted to, right? If you look at principles of people or anyone that's in authority, you will see oftentimes they're not compassionate to those that are below them, because they've been doing this all their life. They know everything, so they automatically hold the standard of the average person a bit higher. But you have to understand that that's not the case with me. Everyone is different. Everyone is subjective. Everyone is different, has a different story, has different experiences. And also remember that just because, like I mentioned earlier, we make these ridiculous requests as well. Just because we're not doing it to a person, we do it to Allah. Ya Allah, eliminate all my problems. Ya Allah, grant me 100 on the test, but I don't want to study. I just want to stay on TikTok, scroll through TikTok or Mass Queen's, Instagram page. I'm just going to scroll through it, and I'm not going to study for my test. Right? But I want Allah to give me 100. That's ridiculous. You don't want to put in the effort. The hadith says, tie your camel, then trust Allah. Right? You do your effort, and then you trust Allah. I don't want to do anything, but I'm going to make this ridiculous request to Allah. Just because you don't do it to him, doesn't mean we don't do it to other things as well. So you also are part of that situation as well. But think, now anytime someone comes to you, anytime you have to advise someone, or anytime you see anyone, be it Muslim, non-Muslim, black, white, in between, rainbow, yellow, Oreo, doesn't matter. Right? You have to be compassionate, you have to be understanding. And like I keep saying all the time, it's the best and the most redundant advice, that's the best. The same way how today we talked about, in Jum'ah we talked about a bit off topic, about Dhul Hijjah, right? And in Dhul Hijjah, the reward is multiplied. The reward is increased. Right? The same way the sin is still one, but the punishment is increased if you do a sin. May Allah protect us. Say amen. Reward is, grown, and we advise people when we're talking about it, how what are the best things to do in Dhul Hijjah? Wallahi, I swear by Allah, the advice was literally pray, read the Quran, right? For those of you that you see in the Jum'ah, read the Quran. Every single letter has 10 rewards. And in the time like this, reward is exponentially grown. Forget about it. So much reward for every single letter. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I'm not going to count how many letters is there. It's a lot. Every single letter has a reward. Right? But yeah, it's such a small, simple thing. Same way how praying. You should be praying regardless. It's an obligatory act. 5 times a day. Continuously every day. Until you pass away. Kind of right. You do this action, yet the reward is so big. The virtue is so high. You're asked about it on your own time. You're asked about it in your graves and all these things. The punishment that comes with it if you don't do it. The reward that comes with it if you do it. Something so small, something you do every single day. How many of us actually think about salah to the point where it's such a big, drastic thing. We do not give mannerisms, salah, Quran, all these things. Think about it. When was the last time we actually, hey, oh my God, I gotta pray. We're like, salah is so important. You get up, you pray, and you go back to your daily routine and you forget about it. But these things are of high virtue, of high status, of high reward. And mannerisms is the same thing. These small things that are continuous, they build up. Same way how we talk about the Hajj, about giving charity. Charity is not deplete wealth. When you give for the sake of Allah. And so just throw a story in there. There was, in Brooklyn, we had, does anyone know Sheikh Kamal al-Makki? So he came to MCC in Ramadan years back. I had no vision here, right? He went to the masjid and he told we're talking about this in Ramadan. There was a taxi driver. The taxi driver came and he wanted to give for the sake of Allah. be able to grant the reward to all these taxi drivers. It's ridiculous. I sat in traffic today for an hour. I wanted to, I was done with it. He said, I want to give for the sake of Allah. But I want to give, he said the amount that he wants to give. And he said, I was thinking about it because I didn't know if I wanted to give it. Right? I didn't know if, because like it's my week's wage, my month's wage. I'm giving it all in one shot. I have a family to feed. I don't make, multi-millions. I'm simply a taxi driver. Think about it. How many times do you have to give up something? Like, I don't really want to give this up. Be it an action, be it monetary, be it whatever it is. How many times will you do such a thing? And it's a bit tempting. I don't want to do it. The taxi driver said, you know what? It's okay. Let's go to dental ship. Whether we just texted me, right? The taxi driver says, you know what? I'll give it for the sake of Allah. He gives it. What happens is that person, and I don't remember the exact, amount of days or weeks, but long story short, this individual, what he makes in a week or 2 weeks, he made in a day or 2 days. This is the way that Allah will back to you. The reason why I mention this, mannerism is no different. So we talked about all the Islamic things, right? Yapped a little bit, went on topic a bit as well. Now I want to focus on the worldly things when it comes to prophetic interactions. We talked about mannerisms. Mannerisms, wallahi, will make your life easy, will make your life so much better. No one wants to be that person that everyone avoids. Right? No one wants to be that person that everyone avoids. Me and Sheikh Whether were talking about this. The person that doesn't have manners is like a fancy restaurant with horrible food. Right? Hear me out for a second. You go, the restaurant's nice, all these decorations, lights, fancy chefs outside, you see all the Lamborghinis parked up front, nice 5-star restaurant. Your expectations and hopes are high. Oh my God, it's going to be amazing. You sit down, you take a bite of the food and you're going to barf. Horrible. Your standard was so high, your bar was so high, and now out of nowhere you are disappointed. Human being without manners is the same way with Allah. Someone may look decent, someone will look good. The moment they open their mouth, they're going to plug in your ears. You don't want to hear this person. This is the effect that bad mannerisms have. You may see it happening to someone else, but you may not realize that you will be that person that people think is a gun. You may be that person that when you open your mouth, I don't want to hear this person. This is the effect that mannerisms or bad mannerisms rather have on you. So make your life awful. Having good mannerisms, not what happens. You're making your life, or by having bad mannerisms, we focus on the Islamic things in our world, it's worldly things. You're making your life more difficult than it needs to be. People will avoid you, people won't want to talk to you, people won't want to sit with you, people won't want to hang out with you. For humans, we like to hang out, it's not an issue. It's not haram as long as you're not going to bad places. People will literally avoid you like a plague. As coronavirus goes down, right? People will avoid you. But if you have good manners, if you have good mannerisms, it'll make your life so much easier. You need help with something, you can talk to someone. You want to just hang out with someone, you can make a phone call, someone will come hang out with you. You make your life difficult by having bad mannerisms. So not only, and you'll see this idea applies to a lot of things that are Islamic, following the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, following that which Allah has told us to do, not only will make your life easy in terms of Islamically, where you will accumulate reward, and ultimately, I will hope for everyone here that our ultimate goal is to get to Jannah. Yes or no? I don't hear anything, that's kind of concerning. Our goal is to get to Jannah, yes or no? Yes or no? I'm asking one time, yes or no?
Yes.
There you go, right? So you want to accumulate as much good as you can. So accumulate as much good as you can. That's the element of Islam in it. But the element of worldly in it is you will see benefit in your life, be it in quality of life, be it in quality of health. And an example, the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is also important when we talk about prophetic interactions where we follow, these interactions, you would practice the sunnah, the companions that practice the sunnah, do things the way he would do them. Though you will see, aside from the Islamic aspect, that these things have worldly benefits as well. Do you guys know what a miswak is or not? Do you guys use a miswak? I better not smell like bad breath in here, right? You will see that the miswak has antibacterial properties in it. Wow, antibacterial properties, right? We use Sensodyne, Colgate, whatever you guys use for it. Right? Science that was developed now in labs and in some high-tech facilities and NASA and this and that, I don't know why NASA is toothpaste, but highly no problem, right? All these things that were developed now that we use and we pay, 20, 30 bucks for a tube of toothpaste. A tree branch from 400 years ago, our prophet was illiterate, they say, was given this and told to use this and it's sunnah. It comes to find out it has antibacterial properties for that we drive our supplements for nowadays. So the idea stands that practicing not only the sunnah, that was the example I gave, but following the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam when it comes to his interactions with people, when it comes to his interactions with individuals, companions, family, whatever it was, those things will not only reap an Islamic reward, but will have worldly benefit as well. When you practice good mannerisms, when you have good mannerisms, when you're compassionate for other people, when you understand other people, when you help out other people, you will see that it will pose a benefit in you in the sense that people will want to hang out with you. And again, we do this for the sake of Allah, right? But we also have to account for the fact that no one likes to be a loner, right? I would hope not. If you like, cool, it's your thing, but no one likes to be lonely. You want to hang out with people. You want to have friends. Not an issue. People will come to you. People will make you, you'll be tolerable. Simple as that. But if you don't have bad mannerisms, no one will want to come to you. At the same time, helping others, you do it for the sake of Allah, but that person can be a gateway for Allah to help you with something that you may be going through. Perhaps you were compassionate to someone. Perhaps you were helpful to someone. If you come a time that you may need help with something, that individual is able to help you, of course, all credit due to Allah, it's all from Allah. That person will extend that hand out to you because you helped them at a time where they were needing help. But now imagine, if I go to someone, I see them praying wrong, right? Let's say this person's a doctor, right? And the orthopedic bone doctor example, right? This person goes, or the person's praying, I tell him, you're praying wrong, you can't, and I just walk out, and I trip and I roll my ankle. Do you think he's going to come help me? No, right? He's going to go, this guy called me out on something and he was disrespectful, I'm just going to walk away. So we give this example, right? You scratch someone's back, they'll scratch your back. No? This idea applies as well. And before all the way, I mentioned, remember, keep in mind that we often make things that are drastic or dramatic requests rather. The idea applies that everything that I mentioned, everything that I talked about, everything that we will talk about, inshallah, in future halaqas to come, you have to think about it from two perspectives. The perspectives of you seeing it from someone else, and someone else seeing you. All these things that I mentioned, before you, next time you see a guy praying wrong, oh brother, Abdurrahman told me to correct the break. No. Before that, look at yourself. This halaqah is meant to be not for us to now become, shuyukh and go, hey, you're wrong, it's okay, I'll correct you, it's okay, you're wrong, it's okay, I'll pat myself on the back, I'm helping everyone out. No. The idea is that this is meant to be a reflection for yourself. Do you have these actions? Do you have these characteristics? If you do, Allah barak, mashallah, keep working on it. But if you don't, make this a time, especially the Hajj and all these things, make sure that you use this as an excuse to get those actions. Because the same way we're laughing right now about, hey, this person is calling people out on things, or this person is, being wild and asking ridiculous things, or this person that, and we're cracking jokes and we're laughing. Behind all these jokes and these laughs, the idea still applies that you may be that person. And of course, everything for the sake of Allah, but you don't want to be that individual.
I want to add that it even shows that you can't even judge someone based off your questions or like something ridiculous.
Yes.
Because from that example, we see that he was actually sincere about it.
Yeah.
It was something you were struggling with, and you actually wanted help with. And that's why he came to the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, asking for it. And, with the Prophet's response to sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we see that he indeed was sincere. Like whether it was the dua itself that, helped him stay away from sins, or whether it was the advice he gave. I feel like it's, I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Did we know, was it the dua or the advice he gave? But I realize it's irrelevant. I realize it's irrelevant because the results were the same. He approached it with sincerity, and as a result, he was actually able to.
Granted, it's also the Prophet of Allah making dua, so
Exactly.
that's an expedited, upwards. So the idea still applies. For example, right, someone may have a situation or an issue, like we talked about earlier. You may have trials and tribulations that I don't have, right? Alhamdulillah, everyone here is, I see nice clothes, nice bags, designer glasses and everything, watches, whatever it is. Alhamdulillah, we are clothed or fed. But think about it. There's people in the world that don't have clothes. There's people that don't have food. There's people that don't have anything. So everything is subjective. Everyone has a different, trial and tribulation. So that's why I mentioned, hey, just because you are not going through it does not mean someone else is not going through that issue. Which is why we should be understanding of where that person is coming from. And as humans, it's normal, right? It's not acceptable. It's not justifiable, but it's understandable. It's two different things: justifiable and understandable. that hey, when you hear a topic or when you hear a question that you yourself know the answer to, and you have familiarized yourself with that answer, it becomes, like second nature to you. And it becomes a very ridiculous question sometimes because of how obvious it may seem to you, not the other person. So this is why when we do, interact with people, we're mindful, hey, just because I know it doesn't mean they know it. Just because I do it doesn't mean they do it. So all these things combine. Like I mentioned earlier, that you also have to be mindful of two perspectives. You may be also the one that's, being laughed at, or not even forget about laughed at. You may be the one that is, victim, or you're the one that is falling into the categories of those that are not compassionate, right? If you look at the story example, and we'll end off on the story, and inshallah we'll take questions after that. But there was an individual, and it's a worldly story because again, we can give the examples of companions, we can give the examples of prophets and this and that, beautiful, amazing. But we like to hear something that's a bit more modern. Granted that it's more relatable to us because of the time and situation that we're in. There was an individual. He hated Muslims, despised Muslims. You guys probably know the story, a bit viral online as well. I saw it before it went online, so I'm going to gatekeep the story a little bit. This individual hated Muslims with every nerve in his body. And he was in the army, he was on one of the armed forces. And the armed forces, do you guys know what IEDs are? They go homemade ones, right? Can't use the word. But they don't have to make them. That's just what they do with the armed forces. So this person came back from his service, they had kids, his daughter goes to school, and he's completely hates Muslims and tells his daughter comes home one day saying, hey, I have X, Y, and Z friend, I really like them. As kids, they just tell the father, hey, I have a new friend in school. This daughter of theirs now lets the father know this person's a Muslim, made by name, or the daughter told him whatever, right? This father of them tells him, hey, stay away from this person. They're Muslim, they're bad people. You guys know the story, bro? Really interesting. They said, hey, this person, the Muslims are bad people. Stay away from this person. The daughter comes back and she's upset. She wants to be friends with this person, they're Muslim. And the father wants to see, hey, why is my daughter so caught up on this one particular friend? There's a bunch of kids that go to the school. Keep in mind, this father literally had a blueprint. The guy himself says, I had a plan laid out, a blueprint about where I'm going to plant and I'm going to, cause harm to these individuals. Can't say the word, but it's the thing that, So he had a blueprint, had everything planned, had everything planted and everything, I'm about to do this. He goes one day, my daughter's so caught up with these Muslims and Muslims, so caught up with them. You know what, let me go check it out one day. He goes to the masjid. Keep in mind, this is a guy that despises Islam to the point where he wants to harm human beings. Goes to the masjid, walks in, and he's greeted by someone who's part of the member or the community of that masjid, and he sits with him, talks with him, takes him to the office, gives him a few books to read. This guy that was planning on going to the masjid is now a Muslim, and he's part of the board of that masjid. He's part of the board of the masjid that he was going to, Simply through what? Compassion, through good speech, through understanding where that person may be coming from. Had he walked in, a white dude, no beard, clean shave, looks like a redneck, he comes into the masjid and the community member said, you know what, you're white, you don't belong here, get out. Or you're not Muslim, get out. You think that he probably would have followed through with his previous plan of, doing what he had to do. But that compassion is such a game changer, man. Wallahi, it's such a big difference. To the point where, forget about him becoming Muslim, he joined that masjid. He's like Katie where he went to the enemy side, So, there's wallahi, I can go on about compassion, about all these things. But the idea is, as all things, perfect mannerisms. Be mindful of mannerisms, and be compassionate. Make others' lives easier, and make your life easier as well. And understand that just because you're not affected by something doesn't mean that others are not affected. Make sense? We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be understanding, to be compassionate, to be a source of good for those in the community, to be a source of help to those that need help. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be successful in all our endeavors. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to apply everything that we learned. Allah forgive me if I made any mistakes, but we'll be taking some questions now, inshallah. We have a few more minutes. Questions, concerns, comments, stories? Someone who wants to share anything? You have anything to say? Questions? Whoever. Doesn't matter.
That's it.
sins, they don't just affect you,
Mhm.
they can have an impact on people around you as well. Like in the case of sin, it affects your family, your reputation, this and that. So, from that story, we learned that it's not just about you, it's about your society, your family, your friends.
Yeah.
And from that, it impacts.
It goes both ways as well, you know. You surrounding yourself, and I love using this example because it's kind of funny, but it's also true. When you yourself are the one that sins, it affects those around you because oftentimes you'll drag them into that sin. And same thing goes with those who are dragged into sin. And even if you may not be getting dragged into sin, the idea also applies of you familiarizing yourself with said sin, which eventually leads to other things. I give the example. Everyone's from New York, right? So I can give this example. When you see snow, oh my God, it's snowing. Okay, back to regular routine. You see snow come off, that's it, fine. I'm from Pakistan, right? So someone from Pakistan comes and they see snow, they think, oh my God, what is this? What's falling from the sky, you know? It's magic, fairy dust. They're not familiar with the sight. Even if someone that comes from Texas, they're not familiar with the sight of snow. Yes or no? So this is something new to them. But for us, we've seen it so often to the point where, you know, if it's, I think it snowed in like Cali or Florida or something, and they closed schools down and like they went to lockdown or something. It was ridiculous. It was like half an inch of snow. But when we can get like a foot of snow, 2 foot of snow, 3 feet of snow, whatever, right? 6 feet, so like 7 feet of snow, the school's still gonna be open. Right? No more, especially with remote now, so it makes it even worse. The idea is that we see it so much, and we've normalized this thing to ourselves. It's become normal. We see it every year, every season, whatever it is. How does this apply to other things? Sins. When you surround yourself with those that sin, regardless of whether or not you practice that sin, whether you indulge in that sin, you surrounding yourself with it is one of the biggest mistakes you can make. Because you eventually will become like, you know, one day it's, oh my God, bro, your example of, you know, drugs, for example. Oh my God, bro, you're smoking, take that away from me. Next day, bro, smoke, but just go over there. Next day, that person's sitting next to you, next day they're passing you too. It's not one step. It's an example, beautiful example of zina, right? Well, what is on the sin? Do not get close to it. Not don't do it, don't indulge it, don't get close to it. Because you getting close to it leads to it. And close in the sense of physical, but at the same time, close metaphorically as well. So when you surround yourself with a sin, when you are seeing a sin commonly or all the time, it goes from it being a shocking scene to you to eventually seeing it so much that it becomes normal to you. And when something becomes normal to you, oh my God, if I do it, it's no big deal. Because it's become normal. So when you surround yourself, like you mentioned, with those that sin, those that practice the sin, surround yourself with the sin, it becomes normal to you, and eventually, one way or another, unless you take yourself out of that situation, you will fall victim to that sin as well. There's no telling me, hey bro, like, you know, my boys are doing all the bad, all the drugs, you name it, top to bottom. But I just hang out with them, you know? No, you're eventually going to start doing it too. So take yourself away from it. And I don't know if this was, I believe this was a hadith, if I'm not mistaken. To paraphrase, I don't have the hadith on top of my head. But they said that, you know, the sins and like company, the hadith was about company. Same way how when you pass, you know, by a good shop, like I just came from a store before I had oils, right? Wallahi, I was walking out of it and I was smelling myself like, oh my God, I smell beautiful, right? It smelled really good. So I simply walked into the store, I didn't put anything in my clothes, I didn't put anything. I walked in the store, walked out, right? And the scent carried onto my clothes. The sins are the same way. It's gonna, the good deeds of the individuals you hang around will eventually come onto you. You guys are young. Surround yourself with those that practice the good deeds. And this makes it a lot easier for you as well. I know it's a bit off the topic of prophetic interactions, but look, as humans, we have a tendency to do that which other people are doing as well. If you are not, let's say for example, you're with your boys, and you are the only one praying, one day you're going to pray with them, or one day you're going to pray on the side, the next day, I'll pray when I get home. Because no one else is praying with you, you feel like the odd one out, all these things. But if you, your friend group, is the one dragging you to pray, every time they do it, you're going to have no choice but to do it as well. It applies for both good and bad. So surround yourself, because it's human nature to be around those, or to do things that people are doing. Nowadays you see the very bad example of when there's a fight on, or like on the street. Everyone takes out their phone and now you're going to start taking out your phone too. Right? It's just human nature. So surround yourself with those that are like the people they want to be, so therefore you can become that person that you want to be. Makes it a lot easier. There's a lot of psychology in it in Islam too, and the hadith mentions how on the other end of the spectrum, you know what an ironsmith is? An ironsmith or a blacksmith, they have rust on their hands or whatever. It's like, they're from the metals, ashes, and all like this dirt on them, top to bottom. There's dirty clothes and all these things. That's how it is to be with those that are bad. Bad things will eventually rub off on you. Same way how good smells will rub off on you. So like you mentioned, it was a very good point. That you should be mindful, same way how you may be affected by someone's sin, someone may be affected by yours. Make sense? Bueno? What's up?
I wanted to say something. You talked about how we shouldn't, like assuming good of people, but how we shouldn't, think of people's actions or deeds or sins. So it just reminded me because sometimes I hear people say, how could they not know this? Or, oh, it's a simple thing. But not everyone knows it. So instead we could say, alhamdulillah that we know it, or we learned, or our parents taught us. Because not everyone is privileged, not everyone is blessed that way. So some of them have to learn it on their own and get embarrassed and probably get shunned by other people. So this is a very good lesson for all of us here, inshallah, and we spread it with other people. Maybe even post it on your Instagram tonight. That you, just because you know something and it's simple, maybe like even wudu, even salah, not everyone knows it. It's not their fault. Like they should learn, of course, they should take the step, but they should never be looked down upon or like, oh, that's a stupid question. All this. It's harmful.
And at the same time, I view it like this as well. If you, for example, right, what's your name? If you see I'm doing something wrong, right, you come and advise me. That advice that you gave me becomes a source of reward for you. Make sense? Because like I mentioned earlier, our ultimate goal is to get to Jannah, right? How does one get to Jannah? By doing as much good as they can, and staying away from as much bad as they can. So, like the sister mentioned beautifully, that if you see someone, you should be thankful, number one, that Allah has given you that knowledge. Not everyone. Think about it like this as well, reverts. They have to hide sometimes from praying from their families because their families don't want them to pray or become Muslim. Oftentimes they won't even know that the family is Muslim. Right? It makes it very hard. Wallahi, I applaud all those people that do that. We actually had a few brothers back in Brooklyn. It's a very difficult thing, and the reward for that is unimaginable. All of them, right? So they don't know some things. They're still learning. Forget about even Muslims are still learning, right? I myself am learning. Just because I'm sitting here doesn't mean anything. I'm no shake, no nothing, right? So it's a whole process. Number one, be thankful of the fact that you know that you have the knowledge of X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. Number two, it becomes a source of reward for you. Do not think Allah all merciful. It simply rewards for having good manners. Smiling is sunnah. You get smiling, it's a reward. Right? You're smiling at me right now, you're cheesing. Right? It's a reward. You're getting this and that as we speak, right? So something so small, and we get a reward for it. Now you guiding someone or directing them and advising them on something they were doing wrong and correcting their actions, you will get reward for it every single time that they're doing it, because you were the one that, of course, by the permission of Allah, you were the one that was able to correct them. So not only, like the sister mentioned beautifully, is it a moment for you to think, sit back and think, hey, extremely lucky that I was in a situation or environment where I was able to learn and I was able to know these things, but at the same time, it's a source of reward for you. You should jump on these opportunities to get as much reward as you can. You know how we, especially as guys, we're passive income, this is passive insanat. You're going to be sitting at home, watching TV or Netflix or Mass Queen's Instagram page, and you're sitting at home and that person is doing, praying, and you corrected them in the prayer they're making, you're getting a reward for it because you advised them. And you did so in a manner that is according to the sunnah, and be compassionate. So like the sister mentioned, be mindful of these things. Be thankful that Allah puts you. The more you thank Allah for blessings, the more Allah will grant you those blessings. But the more you take them for granted, the more you take them away. So be mindful, be thankful to Allah. Allah's blessings and mercy are literally, forget about your arm's length, forget about half arm, forget about hand. Allah's blessings and mercy are literally cubits away, small amounts away. All you have to do is you have to grab out, reach out and grab it. Make sense? Opportunities like this for reward, opportunities for helping someone, opportunities for it to come back to you, all these things. So be mindful of that and also look at it and view it as a source of reward. We'll take one last question, comment, concern. Lose my voice. Everyone's good? Questions? Is there anything in particular, if I may ask you guys, what interactions you want to hear next? Prophet interacted with his companions, Prophet's interactions with non-Muslims, Prophet's interactions with those that were abusive to him.
His interaction with children.
His interaction with children. We can talk about that very briefly right now too, inshallah, if we have time. So, Khadija, you have time? 7:58.
10 minutes?
Okay, that's more than enough, yeah. Inshallah, brother Muhammad Haq is going to be here next week. So I'll pass that on to him. And even for you guys as well. I know Allah Barak that the Masjid is making a very big initiative. Inshallah, we'll be able to keep this short. The Masjid is making a very big initiative to bring youth in, bring Shabab in. And wallahi, I applaud him, and I absolutely, I look up to this massive organization and see all these places, right? Oftentimes we'll think, hey, you know what, people that are older, perhaps they're the ones that have to set things up for little kids. But you have to realize as well, these people, 60s, 70s, tempers are shortening, hormones are decreasing, a lot of factors that come into play, you know? So they may not be the most patient, they might not be the most pleasant to be around. So you as, younger people that are a bit more emotionally stable, if you want to call it, you should make it your initiative when you see kids that come into the masjid, do your best, talk to them, crack a joke with them. Well, you guys are older, I'm assuming some of you work. Go to the store, buy like a box of candy, like a pack of candy or something. Wallahi, this will make memories. When I was little, I remember I used to go to the masjid we were at, and there was one guy, literally every time I would see him, always hand me something. And these things develop a connection with that person. So that person, I saw him in the masjid. So I remember him, and I have a connection, an emotional connection with that person. So these things, he would not get up from sujood until they were off. He would not throw them off, he would not fling them off. He was not disrespectful, tell them, oh, stop playing, right? He would literally let them stay on the back and then he would get up until, they were off. If you look at the example of those that were younger, people our age, even younger than us, were leading armies from a young age, And there was a saying of an individual, I don't want to say who the individual, if it was a hadith or someone else afterwards, but the idea was if you do not hear the children in the back of the masjid, be fearful for your generations to come. When I hear, wallahi, one time I was leading salah somewhere in Brooklyn, a little kid baby, comes up, grabs the sujood mic and starts laughing in the mic really loud. Wallahi, I held it so hard in salah because I was about to crack up in the middle of salah and I was on the mic too, right? But things like this, I remember afterwards, it was divided. Some people were upset. Hey, this kid is in the middle of salah, where's his father? The father's praying that he can only do so much. The other half was laughing with me as well because kid had a very unique laugh, right? Just thinking about it makes me laugh as well. But the idea was this kid's in the masjid. This kid is having fun in the masjid. And this is what Rasulullah advised us, make it so that way kids are able to come in and enjoy, make initiatives for them. Of course, he didn't say directly, have halaqas that talk about prophetic interactions. He said, do these things to bring them towards the masjid. But the kid came in, he was laughing, and these same kids, I'm sitting here right now, I'll give the example myself. By no means am I up there or nothing, I'm just a regular kid as well. But I used to be in the back of the masjid causing havoc. I would neck my boys in the back, the whole, wallahi, the slap would echo off the walls of the masjid. I remember one time, I necked them so hard and I just ran into the salt to start praying so he couldn't hit me back. Right? Everyone causes trouble. This is how it is. But eventually, if you have that compassion that we talked about, at the same time, right? Compassion, understanding, hey, it's still a kid. That compassion is not only applicable to who? To older people. The compassion also applies to people that are little. He's a kid, it's okay, whatever. If he knocks over a shelf or whatever it is, reprimand him if need be. But at the same time, remember he's a child. That compassion will then allow them to learn, and the same kids that you were compassionate to who are running in the back of the masjid will be up here leading salah, and that will be in your reward as well. Everything, wallahi, his mannerisms and reward as well. Allah does not let any action, and when I mean any action, I mean even the smallest of things, Allah does not let it go unaccounted for, and you will get the reward for it if it's in this dunya, and if not, then you will get the reward for it in the akhirah as well. And these small things that I talk about, like the sister mentioned, being kind to those kids. Like Rasulullah was, of course, the kids on the back, and it's a 30-minute sujood, that's not how it works, but like off the if need be. The kid comes on, and sometimes you'll see like this middle right here, the kid will sit over here. People will get mad. Why? The kid's sitting, let him rock. The Rasulullah was literally a prophet. He was leading salah, he was leading the companions. No problem, the kids are coming. It's not an issue. These things, especially with those that are psychology stuff, these small actions of you completely shutting someone off also has an effect on them as well. And back to the point of these small actions that you do will add up. It will build up to the point where you come forth on Yawm al-Qiyamah and all the eternal mountain worth of good deeds. Good deeds, so many good deeds. Your account, your skill is so heavy, on the side of good deeds. Why? Because you were doing these actions that were small, that you overlooked, but you didn't even realize how much reward those things get. So like the sister said, inshallah, we'll carry the message to the brother for about the Prophet's interaction with children. And just be mindful of being compassionate to everyone, especially little ones, and making that initiative yourself to also do something, so that way they can have a connection and a memory with you, and you will eventually develop that connection for them to the masjid. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be a source of good, like we mentioned, to the community. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept all our du'as, to accept our efforts to come here for you guys to listen. May Allah, forgive me for burning your guys' ears. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow my jokes to become funnier, And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us any sins that we had done to forgive those sins. Yawm al-Arafah is coming. Fast on the Yawm al-Arafah for 2 years worth of forgiveness, previous year and the year to come. But we ask Allah to forgive every single one of our sins, to keep our slates clean, to keep us away from sin, to make us compassionate, to make that heavy on our skills. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to follow the mannerisms and the ways of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be granted Jannah al-Firdaus. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لكم وجزاكم الله خيرا.